Consul General of Ireland. My name is Vice Consul Sarah Keating, and I'm delighted to join you virtually this evening to offer best wishes to Celtic Junction Arts Centre during their 2020 annual fundraiser. As I think back to this time last year when I visited the centre in person for their annual fundraiser, I cannot help but think of all that has changed over the last few months. We find ourselves in an unprecedented situation where the work of centres such as yours remains more vital than ever. During these difficult times, we are reminded of the importance of community, a community which I have seen firsthand at your centre and which I have no doubt continues to flourish today. There is so much fantastic programming on offer at the centre, and it provides a home for a number of wonderful partners, from the O'Shea Irish Dance School to the Centre for Irish Music, the Irish Fair of Minnesota and the Owen McKiernan Library. The centre has to be commended for the work they have done in adapting to the current restrictions. During lockdown, they were quick to harness the digital world, organising many fantastic concerts and classes online. Since restrictions have eased, they've taken the leap into outdoor events, a brave step for anybody operating in the Midwest. The Consulate and Irish Government have been delighted to support Celtic Junction over the last number of years through the Immigrant Support Programme. Celtic Junction truly embodies the objectives of this programme in celebrating, maintaining and strengthening the links between Ireland and the global Irish, and in fostering a vibrant sense of community and Irish identity. We look forward to continued engagement and partnership with the centre and hope to someday soon be able to visit in person again. Thank you.
Well, I'm the Director of Education here at the Celtic Junction Arts Centre. I'm the Director of Education for the Irish College. I'm also a teacher of literature and mythology.
And I'm on the board here at Celtic Junction. I've been a student in the Irish College, and I've also I'm now currently an instructor. To be here today with Patrick O'Donnell from the Celtic Junction, talking a little bit about yourself.
So I grew up, Steve, in Dublin. I noticed particularly that there were places where Irish heritage was taking off and had some roots. So particularly the Guthrie Theatre. Tyrone Guthrie was an Anglo-Irish Protestant director. Again, mistakenly seen as an English director. He's really an Irish director. His family home was in County Monaghan. And so I did some research on the Guthrie Theatre's Irish roots, and that was the PhD that I did back at UCD. So I actually went back with my family for 3 years in about 10 years ago and wrote a PhD on that topic. So linking Minnesota and Ireland. And so while I'm proud to be Irish, I'm very proud to be a Minnesotan. And I think Minnesota is one of the great places to grow Irish culture. And we have been seeing that success here with the Celtic Junction. Once you had a kind of a focused attempt to really plant an Irish centre with that kind of the Irish St. Paul roots, particularly joining that kind of river dance energy that Cormac and Natalie had, and sort of fusing that together in a magnificent confluence. You could see the success happening, particularly after they decided to become a nonprofit in 2016. So I think that Irish immigrant viewpoint, as Ireland had become more confident, was something that I very much feel that I'm part of that wave. It's a wave of immigrants who are much more, I would say, assertive in the value of their culture.
Tell me a little bit, how did you get involved with the Celtic Junction?
So when I came back from my PhD, suddenly I discovered an Irish centre had opened. As I was, obviously, as you know yourself, academic work can devour your attention a little bit. And so I started to visit open mics, and then I became involved in various ways with some theatre productions, because obviously I have an interest in theatre like yourself. And gradually through that, I got to know Cormac and Natalie better, and particularly myself and Natalie sat down and started to talk about creating a more formal educational program. And this became the Irish College of Minnesota, which began its first classes with just 2 classes in fall of 2017. So we've just finished in September, we just finished 3 full years, right? And so we're going into our 4th year. And we are now, because of Zoom, we're offering 4 quarters in a year. We're offering a full quarter in the summer. And we have passed our 500th student. And we've had about, counting it this morning, we've had 25 different teachers. And we've offered actually 100 classes in our 3 departments. So our 3 departments are the Irish language, which is our most successful department, literature and history, where your good self and myself labor with great enthusiasm. And then we have a creative arts department, which includes drawing, Celtic mythology, drawing knotwork, and then some musicology classes. We have a variety of classes under Celtic arts. So we have, what I would say is we have been growing. We have that kind of 1990s energy. Cormac and Natalie have it. I have it. You have it in your own way. We have that sense that we've only just begun, in the same sense that in Ireland itself, there's a sense that as a European country, its future is still being forged very confidently.
Right. Now, tell me a little bit about the foundation of the Irish College. Now, Celtic Junction just doesn't offer classes. You framed this as an Irish college. Tell us about that.
Right. So again, the Irish College is a centuries-old structure in Irish cultural history. The first forms of the Irish College were formed in the Catholic Counter-Reformation in Paris in the 1570s. They came there to preserve Irish culture as the Tudors. So this takes us back many, many centuries, as the Tudors were planting Protestantism in Ireland and trying to make the Irish little Englanders, right? So it goes right into the heart of that interesting irritation in the oyster that gives us all of the pearls of Irish culture. That sense of Ireland trying to resist being a colony. So if you are going to take Irish culture seriously, and you're going to delve into trying to invent it in such a fantastic, interesting place as Minnesota, with its great literary heritage, and it's this is a very literate place. Minnesotans are intelligent people. You need to dig deeply into a cultural structure, a template. You can't talk about Irish culture without going into these very deep roots of Irish political resistance, of intellectual resistance. That's why there is a power, a passion, a purpose. There's a very strong why, right? Nietzsche said, if you have a strong why, you can bear any burden. So there's a very strong why, a very strong purpose behind Irish cultural life. It's not just to hold the class here, hold the class there. There's a whole kind of river, kind of tidal pull. There's a river of Irish cultural thought behind anything. As you know yourself, when you're doing Irish drama, there's so much richness in the language, in the literature, in the sense of an Irish consciousness trying to assert itself. I mean, that's why we had the Irish literary renaissance with Yeats about 100 years ago.
We probably ought to remind people right now, for a minute at least, that we're here as part of the 5th annual Celtic Junction fundraiser.
Yes. So
how will the funds generated today and throughout the year help the education program?
So one of the clear goals for this year's fundraiser, I know there's 3 pillars. There's operations and a reserve fund, but for us in the Irish College, we will have a new purpose-built classroom across the corridor from the current library, the McKiernan Library, where we hold classes. So we will have a whole new platform, a whole new way to emphasize discussions, interactions with students, a whole way that we can kind of customize the classroom so we can put some of that Irish cultural story and energy on the walls, perhaps in pictures or in a mural.
History is so attached to the literature. I know in the drama area, you can't teach the drama without the history. They're just infused. Let's look forward a little bit. What do you see in terms of growth, future for the Irish College?
So we are very actively already creating partnerships. So we have a partnership with the University of Maynooth, which is a university a little bit outside Dublin, and we hold the TEG certification program for Irish language learners. It got interrupted this year because of the coronavirus pandemic, but that will allow students here in our classes in the Irish College to get a European recognized international certification in language proficiency. We go from beginner, intermediate, all the way to advanced, and we are just beginning that, and we are the recognized partner for the TEG here in Minnesota, right? So that's one partnership. We also have a very strong partnership that is just beginning with the cultural center in Armagh. It's called Aonach Vaca, which is the center based on Vaca is an Irish mythological horse goddess. And the director of that, Raymond O'Kieran, has been sending us articles and has sent us 115 CDs that we've added to the library. So we are already starting to use some of his writing and some of the material from Aonach Vaca in classes this fall.
Say to someone who has thought about taking a class and thinks, boy, you know, class, I wasn't so great in college in literature, you know, I'm interested, but I don't know if I could really do it. What would you say to that prospective student?
Steve, that's probably the best question to ever ask. I would say that our teachers are content experts. We're very blessed in the quality of the teachers, but everybody is very friendly. That's why I say there's a kind of a Minnesota friendly, welcoming attitude in the Irish College. Everybody presents the material, I would say, in a very community-based sort of manner. So it's not trying to be intellectually intimidating. It's presented in simple, straightforward, clear way. It's very discussion-based, you know. So we really like my favorite students, like your favorite students, are the adult learners who bring a huge wealth of, you know, life experience and sort of wisdom and kind of a sort of a no-nonsense willingness to contribute to the class, and that gives a fantastic kind of convivial, community-based. I mean, it's kind of like the Irish College is a big family, where it's some of the best times we ever have is just coming and having these great conversations about what the literature means, or the history means, or the, you know, the arts mean.
Tell us a little bit about the need for that classroom and what you see there.
Well, we have been expanding, and we occupy the McKiernan Library as a classroom. And the McKiernan Library is a beautiful space, and we work obviously closely with Brian Miller, its director, to make sure we are coordinating everything in harmony with its other needs to the public. But it would be a fantastic addition for us to have our own classroom. It's just one more way that the Celtic Junction is so impressive, that it's constantly adding these platforms, these spaces. Literally, this is physically a literal space. These ways to interact with the great conversation that is Irish culture. If you are not a practicing dancer or musician and want to join the conversation, even at the most sort of beginning level, trying to learn a little bit about Irish literature, about Irish arts, about the Irish language, about Irish history, Irish mythology, it's a great way to get involved in this great community, this great family of people, and this great conversation we're having here on Pryor Avenue in St. Paul, Minnesota.
Great. Well, thank you.
Thank you, Steve. This year's annual fundraiser, help the Irish College grow, help us get a new classroom, help the Celtic Junction with its operations and its reserve fund. And thank you very much for supporting us here at the Celtic Junction.
Well, hi, everybody. Jim Tarbox here again. And this time I'm with Carol Walsh, who is a volunteer here at the Owen McKiernan Library and Reading Room. Carol, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got involved with the library?
Well, I am a St. Paul resident. I've lived in St. Paul since 2004, but in Minnesota for over 30 years now. Originally, I'm from Northwest Indiana, outside of Gary, just over the border from Chicago, actually. And actually, I worked on a master's degree at the University of St. Thomas and finished it, and became familiar with the Center for Irish Studies in the years that I was there, and went to many of their programs. They would honor a Shaughnessy Poet of the Year every year, became friends with Jim Rogers, and I think over time he sort of clued me in to Celtic Junction. And so it took that kind of a pathway. And I started by taking a class or two here or there from the Irish school here, and I am now retired, and I fully intend to keep taking classes.
That's great. How does the library work out for you?
Environmentally, to me, it's like being in somebody's home. It's very relaxing. You almost could have an electric fireplace here. It's very comfortable, I think. And usually the classes I take, there are not a huge number of students here. So you can interact with people, walk around, look and see what's in the shelves. It's like being in a university classroom of yore. If you're at all interested in Irish history or literature or art, architecture, music, that the people here are outstanding and cannot recommend them highly enough. And I hope that they would join me in supporting Celtic Junction with either their time or a donation.
Well, that's great. There's another example of how Celtic Junction Art Center and the Owen McKiernan Library serve the public. Once we get off the ground again, it'll be open to the public, and you too can come and use our facilities. In the meantime, we hope you'll be able to dig deep into your pockets and purses there and make any kind of a donation. Would be greatly appreciated. Thanks so much for tuning in. I'm Jim Tarbox.
I think just being surrounded by all of these wonderful books kind of sets a wonderful stage setting for the classes, and it's cozy. So it has a seminar feel to it. If we could reach out and get more of the community in, not of different age groups maybe or something that, it might be nice to mix it up a little bit, get a fresh perspective. I don't know. I think I've been recommending it to all my friends and colleagues and things. It's been great to loop back and revisit some of my college days and get more out of the literature the second time around.
Well, I was interviewing. I was interviewing Steve this morning. He was coming in through Zoom, and he was saying how great it is not to have to grade anything. So this is actually the secret reason it isn't that hard for me to get teachers. And also why I keep teaching a lot of classes too, is because it's just come, discuss. I mean, you still got to do the preparation and read and think about stuff.
Culture. Culture. We need culture. We need history. We need people, civilization these days. I think. I think this place is kind of a gem, really. And I'm a little biased because it's my heritage, I guess. But I think it's part of world literature now. It's part of world culture now. Every aspect of Celtic Junction is kind of part of the cultural heritage that we all share. So even non-Irish people should take advantage of it. I just feel like this is filling in a gap, from my childhood that was there through my whole life, and taking those tours of Ireland with Erin and then taking these classes. It's kind of like filling in those gaps. It just it's really meaningful.
Thank you, Mary.
You're very welcome.
About 3 years ago, I started taking some lessons in the, not music lessons, I started taking Irish language lessons through the Irish College. And I've had both the Irish language teachers, Tom Jeffers and Lavinia Finnerty, both of whom are great teachers. And I've also taken some of the classes, Irish literature classes with Patrick O'Donnell. And I also did a history book club for a while. So I've had a lot of different experiences here, and everything that I've come to here has been very well done, excellently done. I mean, their concerts, they have both local and international musicians. So people like John Doyle, Dai Spruill, Nora Rendell, Brian Miller, Billy McComsky, Liz Carroll, and you see it in their smaller, compared to other places, smaller type performance area where you're close to the musicians, you can really see them, and you don't have to watch them on a video screen in order to be able to see them. And so those experiences are just wonderful, and they are very inexpensive compared to tickets to other places. We're always amazed at, who we just saw for $20, a ticket, or whatever it is, sometimes $15 a ticket. So those are some of our, very pleasant, very wonderful experiences here at the Celtic Junction. The Irish classes are Both the instructors are very highly qualified and are engaging instructors and do a good job of trying to make a difficult language accessible to non-native speakers. Both of them have been excellent teachers. I know Lavinia a little better because I've taken classes now with her for 2 years, and she is very dedicated to passing on the Irish language, and she's very generous with her time to help all the students so that they can all succeed, no matter where they're at, as they come into the class. And the Irish literature classes that I've taken that are from Patrick O'Donnell. He's not the only one who has done them, but he's the main one, and they are very informative, and they are also informal. So you can learn about these things in a very comfortable type setting, which is very nice. It's not like, you're in a class and you're going to have to take a test and you get all anxious about it and so forth. It's a very enjoyable way to learn about the Irish literature.
What in particular makes the educational programming effective for students? Can you just expand a little bit on that?
Sure. I think for me, it's the small college, the small classes, adult students, which, I was teaching college students and there's a lot of fun in that, but being in a room with adults who've read the material and are participating in the discussion, I think is a real treat for me as a former college teacher. And I'm interested in all of the sort of Irish Celtic literature and history, and so I've taken a couple of classes in history, and now teaching in the drama program. It's been great.
How do you rate Celtic Junction's impact in its? It's been open now 11 years. It's been a nonprofit since 2016. What is it doing well? What way is it succeeding in your view?
I think it's a huge resource for the community. Again, I've only been in town for a couple of years, but I was involved a little bit in the Irish community before that when I was here in Minnesota at Gustavus, and there was just no center. There was no place to bring everything together. And so the Celtic Junction, not only as a place for Irish Celtic arts organizations, events, concerts, plays, teaching, I think that's the beauty of it. And it's a beautiful space. The hundreds of people that go through the building every week, and maybe every day, some days, it's just an amazing resource for the community.
Very good, I agree. One last question, Steve. So how has teaching during the pandemic using Zoom, how has that kind of shaped your experience as both an educator and somebody involved in the Celtic Junction?
There's a surprising one-to-one relationship when you're online with students. I'm really pleased. Now the courses that I've taught are small. I think the maximum was 6 students. And you can get all 6 on a screen. You can pay attention to them. You can look at the body language as you would in a real classroom, in a physical classroom. And so for me, I think it's been working extremely well.
Right. All right, thank you, Steve.
Fáilte Rótas Jack is Misha Strúr Dachas and Closton Gale. I am Patrick O'Donnell. I am the Director of Education here at the Irish College. We are the educational wing of the wonderful Celtic Junction Arts Centre. And I'm having a conversation with Lavinia Finnerty, who is our Irish language teacher. So can you just tell us a little bit about your background, Lavinia, and what brings you to the wonderful state of Minnesota?
Well, I grew up in the west of Ireland in a place called Connemara, Connemara in English, and I was an Irish language teacher in Ireland, in Galway City actually, for quite a while. And then my husband's work got moved to the States, and we had a little journey around the States, and then we ended up in Minnesota about 5 years ago. And I was living out in Woodbury, not knowing the Celtic Junction even existed for my first year here, truth be told. until I wanted somebody else to speak Irish to. And lo and behold, the lovely Tom Jeffers ends up at my door. And then, long story short, I end up in the Celtic Junction, and I haven't looked back since. It's actually been one of the best things that has happened to my family, actually, joining the Celtic Junction. I came here, I suppose, as a teacher of the Irish language, and I came in, I suppose, in my first class. I was all about my notes and wanting my notes, but that didn't take long to realise, you know, the community that's here. And to be honest, I think it's that community and that family feel that has kept me here.
Yes.
And that really, that connection. And as well as that, to add on that, I think that the grow and the passion for the language and for the culture, that is, you know, and each time I feel we're developing, you know, we started off with one class and then that class has been like a foundation for another class and so on. So I feel that development has came as well, and I feel that has happened with the family, if that makes sense. So the students are more than just students. I feel that people come on board. It's quite a unique place because of that, I feel. As I look back, our very first class was quite full on for learners of a language. And then we went back and we took a step backwards and we went back to children's literature. And when I say children's literature, we used the children's books for the beginner learner of the language, learners. And it actually was quite amazing to see how that has progressed. And we started off with the basic word books and we progressed, and now we're up to the chapter books. So when you think of that development, and we're looking now to our next goal is to go on to Limo Flaherty and to do Limo Flaherty short stories in Irish. So when you think of that progression, that has happened in 3 years with beginner students of the language, I think that's quite fantastic, a fantastic achievement. And I suppose maybe I'm jumping the gun, but I would be already looking to the future that, you know, we could develop that more and move on. And one of the days down the road, give us 5 or 10 years time that, well, not 10 years, say 5 years time, we'll be heading and coming in here and we'll be reading, you know, Morty Nochain and Craine Killia. And not only that, but we have some of our students are fantastic at critically analysing the material. So to do that in one language is good, but to do it in 2 languages, to do that as Gaeilge, there is a particular environment in this centre, in the arts centre, that the population we have amongst us, that's what interested them, and they're sparked to and motivated to learn things, to have our Raymond O'Kieran and Ordwacha on board. I believe what they bring another dynamic to the table. They bring the cultural dynamic, and they bring a physical location where we can connect, and hopefully in the future, you know, do student exchanges, for example, as we look in the long term. That will be one of our goals, I would imagine. But, you know, for example, another thing that I think helps the Irish language in this location is our resources. You know, we have this library, the Old McKiernan Library, and the resources are phenomenal, not just in the English language, but in the Irish language. I mean, we have a whole section over there that's all, you know, that's the Irish language. And there's been quite a bit of work put into putting all those together and keeping them. But for our students to be able to utilise them, that's quite phenomenal to have something like that here.
I think a chapter in our little history is coming to an end, and a new chapter is opening with this fundraiser this year, and as we open the new classroom. So my question to you is, so the hope is that we'll have a new classroom built by September or October next year. So how do you think that new classroom will further us along in our attempt to reach into Irish culture and bring a community together? How do you think that classroom will help?
Well, I think that will be amazing. I can't wait. Actually, I suppose it will, first of all, it'll develop the college. It will give us the chance to do more than one class at a time. But also it means that we can use the library as a resource room, and then have the classroom, you know, we can in the library we have books everywhere, but in the classroom we can utilize the walls, we can utilize the space, we can be creative with the language. It will give us a space and for our students who study the language to go in and to take time in that room. It gives a space for the teachers and for the lecturers it gives them a space to work, so with the class, an extra space. And the idea of being able to set up research projects while teaching at the same time, that is a huge advantage to the teachers and the students, I believe.
Is there some particular strength you think that makes what we're doing here a little bit more unique than other places perhaps in America?
Oh, I think I think there's a few questions in there actually, Patrick. I think definitely we're unique in America in the sense that, well, in the places that I've been to in America, that I haven't experienced an art centre like this elsewhere in America. I've experienced centres, but quite often the Irish language. I'll give you one example. When Irish language place, the room was, you had to go up the stairs from the car park. It was put out the back, whereas here the Irish language has a place, it's centre, it's all, it's part of the Celtic Junction Arts Centre. And I think that's very important, that it's not an afterthought out the back, and even though out the back of the car park, that was very well done, but in the sense that they were trying. But I feel here that the effort is on another level.
Oh, absolutely.
It's most definitely on another level. Ceapan gúil ord mulla a gul gon adaltaí, gon locht Ibra seo. Is gon Natalie is Cormac as an agus tuhain, as an maids Ibra had zinte chulawana. But, for those, and for all of that hard work, but also for the volunteers that come in and work. Really, it's a unique place in that sense. And then, for example, we talked earlier about, getting ready for the next class. But when people come on board, it makes preparing for the next class easier, you know. And when we look at Irish and we see, one of the things that makes me very proud about the Celtic Junction is, the Irish language, in the 1920s, we were told the Irish language was dead. Really, we were. And we're still having challenges. And in the Gaeltachts at home, we have challenges today keeping the Gaeltachts. The population in the Gaeltachts are the Irish-speaking language areas at home, but the population there are declining. People are leaving and going elsewhere for work. As a result, actually, the Gaeltacht area, the Irish speakers in Dublin are increasing, actually, in Ireland. But what's very positive and motivating is to see the interest in the language here. When you see that the Irish language has its challenges, and as an endangered language, it does have challenges. But to see the interest in an endangered language here in the Twin Cities in Minnesota, to see it here, and not only that, but to see a centre here that gives it a chance and an opportunity to flourish. And then we have the students that are taking advantage of that opportunity. It's a lovely thing to experience, actually. So Lákins, tukum ad stahan doras seo. Is chulagana hí stairis the shomer sitze, by she the cans goilgin.
So Cormac and Natalie are doing fantastic work here at Celtic Junction Arts Centre, and we in the education wing would really welcome your support to help our work in Irish language, in literature, in history, and in the creative arts. So please support the Celtic Junction this year so that we can have a new classroom, operating funds, and a security of a reserve fund. Thank you very much.
Matasi magi shinta suhurs gan Celtic Junction Arts Centre, nu go colas na Ngail Minnesota and seo, vach mat harva buchib. Agus mat ein cestagi is féidir lib zoomaliste ar rangabe atam Arlene agus mar dúirt me níos túisce is féidir lib na sunrise all at celticjunction.org. So if you would like to make a donation to the Celtic Junction, we would very much appreciate it. We are looking to develop a classroom for the Irish College, and all contributions help. Thank you kindly.
Before the Celtic Junction existed, or before I found the Celtic Junction, I was really kind of in a seeking mode. I was looking for ways to connect to my Irish heritage. all my Irish grandparents or grandparents of Irish descent had long since passed, and I was just curious and wanting that connection, and I was just kind of Googling around and thinking about the language, the Irish language, and there was a class right here in St. Paul, so I signed up, and so I did nothing before that, before Celtic Junction, until I found it. That was my first step, really. I'm going to tell a little story.
Good.
So the first day of class, Tom, the instructor of the beginning Irish class, he had kind of made a list of what people's name would be in Irish, and my name, which is like my long form of my name, is Elizabeth, so he told me that was Ailish. So I went home and I looked I looked that up just to kind of see what it says about the name, and it is linked to Elizabeth, but it's also this is actually a little bit emotional for me. It's also more closely linked to Alice. So there's like these ties, the way the language kind of shifts around. And Alice was my mother's name and her mother's name. And her mother died before it was born. And she was actually connected on the German side, but it was like through this, I just felt like this, because I came there seeking ancestry, and then it was like, oh my gosh, I'm Alice, you know? Yeah, so that was like actually kind of, it like kind of really hit me in the heart,
Right,
you know,
right.
to start that. That's what it was for me. Yeah.
Wow. That's,
See, I feel a little, it gets me a little emotional.
That's
yeah.
good. You're not the only one who
It
has...
was like, oh yeah, like you seek that ancestry and there it is. I think that anyone who's looking for a connection to Irish heritage, I'm sure they'll find something here. I think it's just, there's so many opportunities, and it's filling a gap that I had. I think it might for other people too. Lots of classes and just public events to participate in.
Now, if you could show people my mask, it would be good.
Oh, it's, yeah.
You could tell them it's na pog, don't kiss.
All right.
Yeah, I've always been interested in foreign languages, back when the dinosaurs roamed the earth.
Right.
I got a bachelor's degree from UCLA in linguistics, and I dabbled around with a lot of them.
Right.
But I didn't have Irish, believe it or not, in California. And so basically, you know, we moved with work and whatnot, and we went from California to Colorado. And my first attempt at learning Irish was checking out some really bad tapes from the library, where you couldn't understand what they were saying. You couldn't tell a puff or a duff or, you know, so I just gave up. Right. And then I found out maybe I could go up to Butte, Montana for a week. And that was pretty hard to do and kind of expensive to go. And I wasn't sure they'd even let me off from work for that. So then I just kind of tabled it. And then we moved to Minnesota, and then I Googled it, and it was what an amazing thing. So then I kind of went a little overboard, and I signed up for every class I could get a hold of because, you know, I mean, what if it went away? I mean, I might move. There might not be enough interest. I mean, all sorts of things could happen. So I just kind of signed up for a lot of classes, and so I'm 3/4 Irish heritage, and so I feel pretty strongly about saving endangered languages. And so in particular, this would be the endangered language I want to save. Probably the first thing you should know about Lavinia is that her first language is Irish, not English. Yes. This is something she grew up with in the west of Ireland, so she's really, really fluent. And she also taught Irish in Ireland. Yeah. But I think the thing that I really like about her in these classes, and you know, they're a lot smaller than you might think. It's not a 30-person class or something. She's very passionate about it, and she kind of takes you under her wing. It's, you know, like a big sister or something with this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But she is, and so I really like Lavinia a lot. And probably another thing to know about her, besides that her style is very personal and very warm, is that it isn't like you just are assigned a textbook and then you have this homework and, you know, the kind of usual approach you might have had toward learning a language. She listens to a lot of the feedback from the students. We are preparing to take a proficiency test in Irish. People are going to come out from Ireland, these professors, and they're going to test us in June. We were going to do it last June, but with COVID-19, it got canceled. So we're preparing for that. I take a class from her every Saturday for that, and we're just starting out with the oral. Next, it'll be oral and written and whatnot. But, speaking about this being a place where you can take a lot of, you have a lot of experiences, there are 3 places in the U.S. you can take this. New York City, Washington, D.C., or St. Paul, Minnesota.
Yeah.
I went over with 2 fellow students from the classes here. Yeah, and we went over for a month, and we studied at Carroll Row. And we go basically Monday through Friday to class. They had a lot of cultural things they did in the evening, too. And we were there for 4 weeks, and we stayed with they call it a banatee. This is a woman of the house or whatever, and her husband, the faratee. And they provide all your meals. You're supposed to speak in Irish there while you're there. Made friends that we still have contact with.
Yeah, and you're going back.
Next summer, I'm keeping Lavinia.
Yeah, no, I know. Is this like one of the best places you think you could be to if you wanted to get some proficiency?
I'm of a retirement age, and we have talked about moving away because we don't like Minnesota winters. It's so good. Right. It's keeping me in Minnesota.
Oh, that's
pretty
good
amazing
to hear. Yes.
This is really hard, in COVID times for a lot of things to stay afloat. I wanted to say, if you can, whatever you can, please make a donation to the Celtic Junction Arts Center. It's very important.
So it's been a really interesting growth experience. I mean, looking back to the 4 years ago that I became involved in it, I was of the same, kind of ilk, even though I'm within the Irish community. I knew it existed, but I didn't really know what it was all about. I mean, we all have these, Celtic Junction or an art center or an Irish center or a Celtic center. It's like, that's about, dance and music. And that's definitely not what it's all about. It's about meeting people that are curious like you are. It's about having access to one of the most top-notch Irish libraries, Celtic libraries, in the entirety of North America. It's about being able to trace your genealogy if you're interested in that. It's about being able to take introduction music courses to any instrument that you think you would like to learn. It doesn't matter how young you are. It doesn't matter how old you are. I think, the participants that I've seen here, well, babies don't really participate, but they, take it all in. But, if we're going with the toddlers from their very first lessons to people that are well into their 80s. So that whole depth of humanity, where you have our elders who we learn from, the stories that they can tell, and we have the really young ones who inspire us to take risks and be joyful. And right now, in these really uncertain times where there is no normal, shall we say, having that connection, even though it's mostly virtually right now, has been something that has helped people through an incredibly difficult 7 months. And it's something that they've adapted and grown and become flexible to continue to support the actual community that we are all part of. If you can afford to, if this is something that is precious to your heart, if this community-based art center for the Celtic arts touches you in any way, please consider donating. We all know that you've got a lot of asks right now. Things are tough. Things are incredibly tight. But the arts in particular are struggling during this pandemic because how do you do it? How do you keep that engagement? How do you keep people on the wait, on the ready for when we can come back and spend that time together? We know that we want this establishment to last the test of time. And we have to call on the community that we have looked for ways to support as best we can to help join us on this mission. So if you can donate, please do. If you can't donate, we absolutely understand, and we all hope to see you very soon.